Sarah Martinez never imagined that a casual Saturday morning would change her entire life. She was 26 years old, working as a kindergarten teacher in a small town in Texas, and had never held a gun in her life. Her weekends were usually spent grading papers, reading books, or tending to her small garden behind her modest apartment. But on this particular morning, her brother Jake had other plans for her. Jake had been pestering Sarah for months to join him at the local shooting range. He was part of a competitive shooting club and couldn't understand why his sister showed no interest in what he considered the most exciting sport in the world. Sarah had always declined, claiming she had better things to do than play with dangerous weapons. She preferred her quiet life, her students, and her peaceful routines. "Come on, Sarah," Jake pleaded over breakfast at their usual diner. "Just one time. I promise you'll love it. Besides, the club is having a beginner's day today. There will be plenty of instructors to help you." Sarah stirred her coffee and looked at her younger brother's eager face. Jake had always been the adventurous one in their family. While she chose education and stability, he had joined the military straight out of high school and later became a police officer. Their parents had passed away in a car accident 5 years earlier, and since then, Jake had become increasingly protective of Sarah, always trying to get her involved in activities that he believed would help her become more confident and self-reliant. "I don't know, Jake," Sarah said, pushing her scrambled eggs around her plate. "Guns make me nervous. What if I accidentally hurt someone?" Jake laughed gently. "That's exactly why you need proper training. Besides, the instructors are all certified professionals. They won't let anything happen to you or anyone else." Sarah had to admit that her brother's persistence was wearing her down. She also realized that she had been living in her comfort zone for too long. Since their parents' death, she had become even more cautious and withdrawn. Maybe it was time to try something completely different. "Fine," she said finally. "But just this once, and if I hate it, you have to promise never to ask me again." Jake's face lit up with excitement. "Deal. You won't regret this, Sarah. I have a feeling you're going to surprise yourself." 2 hours later, Sarah found herself standing in the parking lot of the Lone Star shooting range, feeling completely out of place. She had dressed in jeans and a simple t-shirt, as Jake had suggested, but she still felt like she was wearing a costume. The parking lot was filled with pickup trucks and motorcycles, and most of the people heading into the building looked like they had been handling firearms since childhood. The shooting range was larger than Sarah had expected. The main building housed a pro shop filled with various types of firearms, ammunition, and accessories that she couldn't even begin to identify. The walls were decorated with hunting trophies and photographs of local shooting champions. The smell of gun oil and leather filled the air, and the sound of distant gunfire echoed from the indoor ranges. Jake introduced Sarah to Tom Wilson, the head instructor for the beginners program. Tom was a man in his 50s, with calloused hands and kind eyes. He had been teaching firearm safety for over 20 years, and had a reputation for being patient with nervous beginners. "Welcome to the Grange, Sarah," Tom said, extending his hand. "Jake tells me you've never shot before." "That's perfectly fine. We'll start with the absolute basics and take everything nice and slow." Sarah shook Tom's hand, surprised by how reassuring his presence was. "I have to be honest, I'm pretty nervous about this whole thing." Tom smiled. "That's actually a good sign. The people who worry me are the ones who aren't nervous at all. Your caution means you'll take the safety rules seriously, and that's the most important thing." The first hour was spent entirely on safety instruction and basic firearm knowledge. Tom explained the fundamental rules of gun safety, how different types of firearms worked, and the proper way to handle them. Sarah was surprised to find herself genuinely interested in the technical aspects. She had always been a good student, and her natural curiosity began to overcome her initial fear. "The most important thing to remember," Tom explained as he demonstrated with an unloaded pistol, "is that every gun is always loaded until you personally verify that it's not. Even if someone hands you a gun and tells you it's empty, you check it yourself. Every single time." Sarah watched carefully as Tom showed her how to safely check if a firearm was loaded, how to hold it properly, and how to aim using the sights. Her hands were steady as she practiced the movements with the unloaded weapon, and she found the precision required for proper grip and stance to be almost meditative. You're a natural at this, Tom observed as Sarah practiced her stance for the 10th time. Your form is excellent for a beginner. You're keeping your dominant eye aligned with the sights. Your grip is firm but not tense, and your breathing is controlled. Have you done any other sports that require precision? Sarah shook her head. Not really. I mean, I played tennis in high school, but nothing recently. I guess I've always been detail-oriented because of my teaching job. After the safety instruction, Tom led Sarah to the indoor range. The sound of gunfire was much louder here, even with ear protection, and Sarah felt her nervousness return. The range had individual shooting lanes separated by concrete walls, and each lane had a paper target at the far end. We're going to start with a .22 caliber pistol, Tom explained, showing Sarah a small, lightweight firearm. It has very little recoil, so it won't startle you, and it's perfect for learning the fundamentals. Tom loaded a single round into the pistol and handed it to Sarah. Remember everything we practiced. Take your time. Focus on your breathing, and when you're ready, slowly squeeze the trigger straight back. Sarah's heart was pounding as she raised the pistol and aimed at the target 25 feet away. She tried to remember all of Tom's instructions while fighting the urge to close her eyes. She took a deep breath, let half of it out, and slowly applied pressure to the trigger. The gun fired with a sharp crack that seemed much louder than she had expected despite her ear protection. The recoil was minimal, just a small push against her hand, but she was so surprised by the noise that she wasn't sure if she had hit the target at all. "Outstanding!" Tom exclaimed, looking through a spotting scope at the target. "You hit the bullseye on your very first shot." Sarah lowered the pistol, hardly believing what she had heard. "Are you sure?" "That seems impossible." Tom invited her to look through the spotting scope, and sure enough there was a small hole just slightly left of center in the black circle at the middle of the target. Sarah felt a rush of pride and excitement that she hadn't experienced in years. "I want to try again," she said, surprising herself with her enthusiasm. For the next hour, Sarah fired round after round under Tom's careful supervision. With each shot, her confidence grew, and her accuracy improved. By the end of the session, she was consistently hitting the center of the target, and Tom was shaking his head in amazement. "Sarah, I've been teaching shooting for 2 decades, and I've never seen a beginner pick it up this quickly. You have exceptional natural ability. Your hand-eye coordination is remarkable, and your ability to control your breathing and maintain focus is what I'd expect from someone who's been shooting for years." Jake had been watching from the observation area, and his excitement was obvious when Sarah emerged from the range. "How did it go? Did you love it as much as I thought you would?" Sarah was still processing her own feelings about the experience. She had expected to be scared, to hate the noise and the feeling of holding a weapon. Instead, she felt energized and accomplished. There was something deeply satisfying about the precision required, the mental discipline, and the immediate feedback of seeing exactly where each shot landed. "It was incredible," she admitted. "I can't believe how much I enjoyed it. And apparently, I'm not terrible at it." Tom joined their conversation, his enthusiasm evident. "Not terrible" is a massive understatement. "Sarah, have you ever considered competitive shooting? There's a local club that meets here twice a week, and I think you'd really enjoy it. Plus, there are several other women in the group, so you wouldn't be the only one." Sarah hesitated. "I don't know. This was just supposed to be a one-time thing. I'm not really the competitive type." "Think about it," Tom urged. "The club is very welcoming to beginners, and you could start slowly. We have different types of competitions, from informal matches to more serious tournaments. You could try a few different disciplines and see what interests you most." As they drove home, Jake couldn't stop talking about Sarah's performance. Tom was genuinely impressed, Sarah. He doesn't throw around compliments lightly. "I think you should at least go to a few club meetings and see what it's like." Sarah stared out the window, watching the familiar scenery of her small town pass by. She thought about her routine life, her predictable days, and the excitement she had felt on the shooting range. For the first time in years, she had discovered something that challenged her and made her feel truly alive. "Maybe I will," she said quietly. "Maybe I will." The following Tuesday evening, Sarah found herself back at the Lone Star shooting range for her first club meeting. She had spent the intervening days thinking about her experience and researching competitive shooting online. She was surprised to learn about the variety of shooting sports available and the high level of skill required for serious competition. The club meeting was held in a conference room adjacent to the pro shop. When Sarah arrived, she found about 30 people of various ages gathered around tables, discussing upcoming matches and sharing techniques. She was relieved to see several other women in the group, ranging from teenagers to seniors. Tom introduced Sarah to the group, and she was immediately struck by how welcoming everyone was. These weren't the intimidating gun enthusiasts she had imagined, but rather a diverse group of people who shared a passion for precision shooting. "Welcome to the club, Sarah," said Maria Rodriguez, a woman in her 40s who Tom introduced as the club's treasurer and one of their top competitors. "Tom tells us you're a natural. That's exciting. We're always happy to have new talent, especially female shooters." Sarah felt a bit embarrassed by the attention. "I really am just a beginner. I only shot for the first time on Saturday," Maria smiled. "We all started somewhere. I began shooting just 3 years ago when my husband dragged me to the range, much like your brother did with you. Now I compete nationally and have won several state championships." The meeting covered club business, upcoming competitions, and training opportunities. Sarah learned that the club participated in several different shooting disciplines, including precision pistol, rifle shooting, and practical shooting competitions. Each discipline had its own techniques, equipment requirements, and competitive structure. "We're always looking for people to try different disciplines," explained David Chen, the club president. "Some people find their niche right away, while others enjoy trying different things. The great thing about shooting sports is that there's something for everyone." After the formal meeting, several club members invited Sarah to join them for an informal practice session. She was hesitant, still feeling like an outsider, but Maria encouraged her to participate. "The best way to learn is by shooting with experienced competitors," Maria said. "We can teach you things that you'd never learn just shooting by yourself." Sarah spent the next 2 hours on the range with Maria, David, and several other club members. They introduced her to different types of firearms and shooting positions, and she began to understand the subtle differences between various shooting disciplines. "Try this position," Maria suggested, demonstrating a standing shooting stance used in precision pistol competition. "It's more challenging than shooting from a bench rest, but it's also more rewarding when you master it." Sarah attempted the standing position, finding it much more difficult to maintain accuracy without the support of a bench. Her shots were scattered across the target, and she felt frustrated by the dramatic difference in her performance. "Don't worry," David said, noticing her disappointment. "Standing position takes months to master. The fact that you're hitting the target at all is impressive for your second time shooting." As the evening progressed, Sarah found herself drawn to the technical aspects of shooting. She asked countless questions about sight alignment, trigger control, breathing techniques, and mental preparation. The experienced shooters were patient with her curiosity and generous with their knowledge. "You ask good questions," observed Frank Murphy, an older gentleman who had been competing for over 30 years. "You're thinking about the fundamentals, which is exactly what you need to focus on as a beginner. Too many people want to rush ahead to advanced techniques without mastering the basics." By the end of the evening, Sarah had made a decision that surprised even herself. She asked Tom about joining the club officially and inquiring about equipment she would need to begin practicing regularly. "I'd recommend starting with your own pistol," Tom suggested. "Borrowing club guns is fine for getting started, but having your own equipment allows you to develop consistency. We can help you select something appropriate for a beginning competitor." Sarah left the range that night with a head full of new information and an unexpected sense of excitement about the future. For the first time since her parents' death, she had found something that challenged her and connected her with a community of like-minded people. The drive home was quiet as she processed everything she had learned. She thought about her comfortable but predictable life as a kindergarten teacher, her quiet evenings at home, and her reluctance to try new things. The shooting range had introduced her to a completely different world, one where precision, mental discipline, and continuous improvement were valued above all else. Sarah realized that she had been living her life in a very small box, afraid to take risks or step outside her comfort zone. Her brother Jake had been right to push her toward new experiences, Even though she had resisted, the shooting range had shown her that she was capable of more than she had ever imagined. As she pulled into her driveway, Sarah made a mental note to call Tom the next day about purchasing her first firearm and officially joining the club. She had no idea where this new interest would lead, but for the first time in years, she was excited to find out. The next few weeks passed in a blur of learning and practice. Sarah purchased her first pistol, a precision .22 caliber target gun that Tom recommended for beginning competitors. She also invested in proper shooting glasses, ear protection, and a gun safe for her apartment. The initial expense was significant for her teacher's salary, but she viewed it as an investment in herself and her new passion. Sarah began practicing at the range 3 times a week, usually in the evenings after school. She worked methodically through the fundamentals, keeping detailed notes about her progress and areas for improvement. Her teaching background helped her approach shooting as a subject to be studied and mastered through systematic practice. Her accuracy improved rapidly, but more importantly, she developed the mental discipline required for competitive shooting. She learned to block out distractions, control her breathing, and maintain focus for extended periods. These skills began to carry over into other areas of her life, and she found herself more confident and focused in her classroom as well. "You're becoming quite the student of the sport," Tom observed during one of their practice sessions. "Your dedication is remarkable. Most beginners practice once a week at most, but you're here constantly, always working to improve." Sarah reloaded her pistol and took her position at the firing line. "I've never found anything that challenged me like this." In teaching, once you learn the curriculum and classroom management techniques, the job becomes fairly routine, but shooting requires constant attention to detail and continuous improvement. There's always something to work on. Tom nodded approvingly. That's the mindset of a true competitor. Most people are satisfied with being good enough, but champions are never satisfied. They're always looking for ways to improve, even when they're already performing at a high level. As Sarah's skills developed, other club members began to take notice of her rapid progress. Maria invited her to attend a local competition as an observer, just to see what competitive shooting was like. "It's different from practice," Maria explained. "There's pressure, time limits, and other competitors watching. But it's also incredibly exciting. I think you'd enjoy seeing what you're working toward." The competition was held at a larger range about an hour from Sarah's town. When they arrived, Sarah was amazed by the level of organization and professionalism. There were competitors from across the state, ranging from teenagers to seniors, all preparing for their events with focused intensity. "This is a precision pistol match," Maria explained as they watched the competitors prepare. Each shooter fires a series of timed strings at different distances. The scoring is based on accuracy, with the center of the target worth the most points. Sarah watched in fascination as the competitors went through their preparation routines. Some performed elaborate warm-up exercises, others meditated quietly, and a few practiced their grip and stance without actually firing. The level of mental preparation was unlike anything she had seen in other sports. "The mental game is at least half of competitive shooting," Maria continued. "Physical technique is important, but at the higher levels, everyone has good technique. The winners are usually the ones who can handle pressure and maintain their focus when it matters most." As the competition began, Sarah was struck by the intense concentration required. The range was completely silent, except for the commands from the range officer and the sound of gunfire. Between strings, competitors recorded their scores and analyzed their performance, making subtle adjustments to their technique. "See that woman in lane 12? Maria whispered, pointing to a competitor who appeared to be in her. "That's Jennifer Walsh. She's one of the top female precision shooters in the country. She's won multiple national championships and has represented the United States in international competition." Sarah watched Jennifer's smooth, controlled movements as she fired her string of shots. There was no wasted motion, no visible tension, just a perfect economy of movement that spoke of years of dedicated practice. "She makes it look so easy," Sarah observed. "That's what thousands of hours of practice will do," Maria replied. "Jennifer started shooting when she was 12 years old. She's been competing at the national level for over 15 years. As the competition concluded and the final scores were announced, Sarah found herself dreaming about what it would be like to compete at that level. The precision, the mental challenge, and the satisfaction of perfect execution appealed to her in ways she hadn't expected. "What would it take for someone like me to compete in a match like this?" she asked Maria as they prepared to leave. Maria smiled. "More practice, some coaching, and the courage to enter your first competition. Based on your progress so far, I'd say you could be competitive in the novice division within 6 months." During the drive home, Sarah couldn't stop thinking about what she had witnessed. The level of skill and dedication required for competitive shooting was intimidating, but also inspiring. She realized that she had found something worth pursuing seriously, something that would challenge her for years to come. That night, Sarah sat at her kitchen table with a notebook, writing down goals for her shooting development. She wanted to compete in her first match within 3 months, win a novice division competition within 6 months, and eventually work her way up to the expert level. As she wrote, Sarah realized that her life had changed completely in just a few weeks. The quiet kindergarten teacher who had been afraid to hold a gun was now planning a competitive shooting career. She had discovered abilities she never knew she possessed, and found a passion that energized her in ways she hadn't felt in years. The transformation wasn't just about shooting. Sarah found herself more confident in all areas of her life, more willing to take risks and try new things. The mental discipline required for shooting was helping her tackle other challenges with greater focus and determination. As she prepared for bed, Sarah looked at the gun safe in her bedroom closet and smiled. Tomorrow she would be back at the Grange, working on her technique and preparing for the competitions ahead. She had no idea how far this journey would take her, but she was excited to find out. 3 months after her first visit to the shooting range, Sarah found herself standing at the registration table of her first competitive shooting match. Her hands were slightly trembling as she filled out the entry form, not from fear of the firearms, but from pure nervousness about competing against experienced shooters. The Brazos Valley Precision Match was considered a friendly, beginner-oriented competition. But to Sarah, it felt like stepping into the Olympics. The morning air was crisp as competitors began arriving at the outdoor range. Sarah had practiced extensively for this moment, spending countless hours perfecting her stance, grip, and breathing technique. Her shooting scores in practice had been consistently improving, with Tom and Maria both encouraging her to take this next step. Still, the gap between practice and actual competition felt enormous. "You look nervous," observed a voice behind her. Sarah turned to see an older gentleman with kind eyes and weathered hands extending toward her. "I'm Robert Stevens, but everyone calls me Bob. I've been shooting competitively for about 40 years, and I still get butterflies before every match." Sarah shook his hand gratefully. "Sarah Martinez. This is my first competition ever. I'm terrified I'll embarrass myself." Bob chuckled warmly. "The secret is that everyone here wants you to do well. Shooting sports have the most supportive competitors you'll find anywhere. We're all competing against the target, not really against each other. Your success doesn't take anything away from mine." As Bob spoke, Sarah noticed other competitors stopping by to introduce themselves and offer encouragement. There was none of the aggressive posturing she had expected from competitive shooting. Instead, she found a community of people genuinely interested in helping newcomers succeed. "The key to your first match," explained Patricia Williams, a woman in her 50s who had won the previous year's state championship, "is to forget about everyone else and shoot your own match. Don't worry about scores or rankings. Just focus on executing the fundamentals you've practiced." Sarah spent the next hour familiarizing herself with the range layout and competition procedures. The match consisted of 4 stages, each requiring different skills and shooting positions. The first stage was prone position at 50 yards, followed by standing unsupported at 25 yards, sitting position at 50 yards, and finally kneeling position at 25 yards. Each position required 20 shots, with points awarded based on accuracy. During the practice period before the official competition began, Sarah was relieved to find that her shots were grouping well. The fundamentals she had drilled endlessly seemed to be holding up under pressure. Tom had traveled to the match to serve as her coach, and his presence provided additional confidence. "Your form looks solid," Tom observed as Sarah fired her practice rounds. "Remember to take your time between shots. This isn't a speed competition, so use as much of the time limit as you need to ensure each shot is deliberate and controlled." When the competition officially began, Sarah was assigned to Relay 2, which meant she would shoot in the second group. This gave her the opportunity to observe the first relay and see how experienced competitors handled the pressure of actual competition. She watched in fascination as the first group of shooters went through their routines. Some competitors had elaborate pre-shot rituals, while others appeared almost casual in their approach. What struck Sarah most was the intense concentration visible on every face during the actual shooting sequences. "Notice how quiet it gets when they're actually firing," Tom whispered. "That level of focus is what you need to develop over time. For now, just concentrate on hitting the center of the target." When Sarah's relay was called to the line, her heart rate increased noticeably. She had practiced these positions hundreds of times, but doing them under the eyes of judges and other competitors felt completely different. She took her position for the prone stage, settled into her shooting mat, and tried to control her breathing. The range officer's commands echoed across the facility. "Shooters, you have 2 minutes for sighting shots, followed by 20 minutes for record fire. Load and make ready." Sarah loaded her rifle and took her first sighting shot. The bullet struck slightly high and to the right of center. She made a small adjustment to her sights and fired again. This shot was much closer to the center, and she felt her confidence beginning to return. "Commence fire for record," came the next command. Sarah settled into her shooting rhythm, taking each shot deliberately and focusing on the fundamentals that had become second nature during her months of practice. Breathe, aim, squeeze, follow through. Breathe, aim, squeeze, follow through. The world around her seemed to fade away as she concentrated entirely on the task at hand. When the prone stage was complete, Sarah was pleasantly surprised to discover that most of her shots had landed in the center rings of the target. While not perfect, it was a respectable showing for her first competition. More importantly, she had managed to control her nerves and execute her technique under pressure. The standing stage proved more challenging. Without the stability of a prone position, Sarah found her natural breathing and heartbeat causing noticeable movement in her sight picture. She had practiced standing position extensively, but competition pressure seemed to amplify every small tremor. "Take your time," she heard Tom call quietly from behind the firing line. "Remember your training." Sarah forced herself to slow down and wait for her natural respiratory pause before breaking each shot. Some shots strayed toward the outer rings of the target, but she managed to keep all 20 rounds within the scoring area. For a first competition, it was a solid performance. The sitting and kneeling stages went progressively better as Sarah settled into the rhythm of competition. By the final stage, she found herself actually enjoying the experience rather than simply enduring it. The mental challenge of maintaining focus for an extended period was exactly what had attracted her to shooting in the first place. When the match concluded and scores were calculated, Sarah was amazed to discover that she had finished third in the novice division. Out of 12 novice competitors, she had earned a bronze medal in her very first match. "Outstanding performance," congratulated Patricia Williams as she shook Sarah's hand. "Your consistency across all 4 positions was impressive." Most first-time competitors have at least one stage where they struggle significantly, but you maintained good form throughout. Bob Stevens, who had introduced himself that morning, finished second in the expert division despite having 40 years of experience. "You shot a very smart match," he told Sarah. "You didn't try to do anything fancy, just executed the basics well. That's the foundation of all good competitive shooting." During the drive home, Sarah felt a sense of accomplishment unlike anything she had experienced in her teaching career. The immediate feedback of competitive shooting, where success or failure was measured in precise quantifiable terms, appealed to her analytical nature. "You exceeded my expectations today," Tom said as they discussed the match. "Most importantly, you showed good mental management under pressure. That's something that can't really be taught, only developed through experience." Sarah realized that competitive shooting satisfied needs she hadn't even known she possessed. The combination of physical skill, mental discipline, and individual accountability created a perfect storm of personal challenge and growth opportunity. Over the following weeks, Sarah threw herself into training with renewed intensity. The success at her first match had given her confidence, but it had also revealed areas where improvement was needed. She began working with a more experienced coach, invested in better equipment, and started keeping detailed training logs to track her progress. "Your standing position needs work," observed Maria Rodriguez during one of their practice sessions. "It's your weakest position, but also the one with the most potential for improvement. Standing position is where matches are won or lost at higher levels of competition." Sarah dedicated entire practice sessions to standing position shooting, working on balance, breathing control, and natural point of aim. The improvement was gradual but noticeable, and her confidence in the position grew steadily. 3 weeks after her first competition, Sarah entered her second match. This time, she felt significantly less nervous and more focused on specific performance goals rather than simply hoping to avoid embarrassment. The competition was larger, with nearly 60 shooters across all divisions. Sarah was surprised to recognize several faces from her first match, and she was beginning to feel like part of the competitive shooting community rather than an outsider looking in. "How are you feeling about today?" asked Jennifer Walsh, the national champion Sarah had watched at her first competition as a spectator. Jennifer was competing in the expert division, but had taken time to speak with several novice shooters before the match began. "Much more confident than last time," Sarah replied honestly. "I feel like I know what to expect now, and I've been working specifically on the areas where I struggled last month." Jennifer smiled. "That's the right attitude. Competitive shooting is really about competing against yourself and constantly trying to improve. The rankings and medals are nice, but the real satisfaction comes from executing at a higher level than you thought possible." During the warm-up period, Sarah noticed that her shots were grouping more tightly than they had at her first competition. Weeks of focused practice were paying dividable results, and she felt genuinely excited about the challenge ahead. The match format was similar to her first competition, but with the addition of a fifth stage shot in standing position at 50 yards. This was considered one of the most challenging disciplines in precision shooting, requiring exceptional stability and mental control. Sarah's performance in the first 4 stages was markedly better than her debut competition. Her prone and sitting positions were strong, and even her standing position at 25 yards showed significant improvement. She was beginning to understand the rhythm and mental approach required for consistent, competitive shooting. The final stage, standing at 50 yards, proved to be a revelation. Sarah had practiced this position extensively since her first match, and the extra preparation showed in her performance. Her shots formed a tight group in the center of the target, earning some of the highest scores of her young competitive career. "That was an exceptional final stage," commented the range officer as Sarah finished her last shot. "Your standing position has improved dramatically since your first match here." When final scores were posted, Sarah was stunned to discover that she had won the novice division by a significant margin. More impressively, her total score would have placed her 4th in the intermediate division, suggesting that she was ready to move up in classification. "You're progressing faster than anyone I've coached," Tom told her during the awards ceremony. "Your combination of natural ability, work ethic, and analytical approach is quite rare. I think you should consider entering some regional competitions to test yourself against stronger fields." Sarah accepted her first-place trophy with a mixture of pride and disbelief. 6 months earlier, she had never held a firearm. Now she was winning shooting competitions and being encouraged to compete at higher levels. The drive home provided time to reflect on how dramatically her life had changed. Teaching still provided professional satisfaction, but competitive shooting had become her true passion. She found herself thinking about training strategies during school hours and looking forward to range time as the highlight of each week. "I think I want to try to make the state team," Sarah announced to Jake during dinner the following evening. "Tom thinks I have the potential to compete nationally if I continue improving at this rate." Jake nearly choked on his food. "6 months ago, you were afraid to touch a gun. Now you want to make the state team? That's incredible, Sarah. I'm really proud of you." Sarah realized that her brother's suggestion to try shooting had unleashed abilities and ambitions she never knew she possessed. The quiet kindergarten teacher had discovered a competitive fire that surprised everyone, including herself. Over the next 2 months, Sarah continued competing in local and regional matches while gradually moving up to more challenging divisions. Her scores continued improving, and her reputation within the competitive shooting community began to grow. "You should consider specializing in one particular discipline," suggested Maria after Sarah's fourth consecutive first-place finish in the novice division. Your standing position shooting is becoming quite remarkable. You might want to focus specifically on precision pistol events. Sarah had been thinking along similar lines. While she enjoyed all aspects of competitive shooting, precision pistol allowed her to showcase her natural steadiness and mental discipline most effectively. The challenge of maintaining perfect control while shooting freehand appealed to her perfectionist nature. She began working with a specialized precision pistol coach and started competing exclusively in that discipline. The improvement was immediate and dramatic. Her scores climbed steadily, and she began winning intermediate division matches within weeks of moving up in classification. "Your progress is unprecedented," observed David Chen, the club president, after Sarah won her sixth consecutive match. "I've been involved in competitive shooting for 15 years, and I've never seen anyone improve this quickly. You're developing into something special." Sarah was beginning to believe it herself. The skills that made her an effective teacher, attention to detail, patience, and systematic improvement were translating perfectly to competitive shooting. More importantly, she had discovered a competitive spirit that had been dormant her entire life. As she prepared for her first state-level competition, Sarah reflected on the journey that had brought her to this point. The nervous kindergarten teacher who had reluctantly agreed to try shooting was evolving into a confident competitor with legitimate aspirations for national-level success. The transformation wasn't just about shooting skills. Sarah found herself more assertive in all areas of her life, more willing to take on challenges that would have intimidated her before. The mental discipline required for competitive shooting was carrying over into every aspect of her daily routine. "I never imagined I could be good at something like this," Sarah confided to Tom during a practice session. "Growing up, I was always the quiet one, the one who avoided competition and confrontation. Now I look forward to testing myself against the best shooters in the state." Tom smiled as he watched Sarah's warm-up shots group tightly in the center of the target. "Sometimes we don't know what we're capable of until we're forced to find out. Your brother did you a tremendous favor by dragging you to that first range session." As Sarah prepared for the state championship, she knew that her competitive shooting journey was just beginning. The quiet teacher had discovered abilities that surprised everyone, including herself. She was no longer just participating in competitive shooting, she was beginning to dominate it. The state competition would be her biggest test yet, with the top female precision shooters from across the region competing for the championship title. Sarah felt ready for the challenge, confident in her preparation and excited about the opportunity to test herself against the highest level of competition she had yet encountered. Her practice scores suggested that she was capable of competing with anyone in the state, regardless of experience level. The question now was whether she could maintain her composure and execute her technique when the stakes were highest. As she loaded her equipment bag for the trip to the state championship, Sarah smiled at how far she had come. The woman who had been afraid to hold a gun was now preparing to compete for a state title. It was a transformation that no one could have predicted, least of all Sarah herself. The following morning would bring the biggest challenge of her young competitive career, but Sarah felt ready. She had discovered abilities she never knew she possessed and developed skills that placed her among the elite shooters in her state. The quiet kindergarten teacher was about to announce herself on the biggest stage competitive shooting had to offer. Her journey from fearful beginner to state-level competitor had taken less than a year, but the lessons learned and confidence gained would last a lifetime. Sarah had discovered that she was capable of achieving excellence in ways she had never imagined possible. The state championship would reveal whether her rapid rise through the competitive ranks was sustainable at the highest levels. Sarah believed it was, and she was eager to prove it to herself and everyone who had supported her remarkable transformation. From reluctant beginner to serious competitor. The Texas State Precision Shooting Championship was held at a sprawling facility outside Austin featuring multiple ranges and accommodating over 200 competitors from across the state. As Sarah drove through the gates on the morning of competition, she was struck by the scale and professionalism of the event. This was far beyond the friendly local matches where she had built her reputation. Sarah had spent the previous month preparing specifically for this competition, working with a new coach who specialized in developing elite precision shooters. Coach Margaret Thompson had competed internationally for over a decade before transitioning to coaching, and her approach was methodical and demanding. State-level competition is where mental preparation becomes as important as physical technique, Margaret had explained during their training sessions. You'll be shooting alongside women who have been competing for decades. Your technical skills are strong enough to win, but you need to believe you belong at this level. The registration process took over an hour, with equipment checks, classification verification, and competitor briefings. Sarah was assigned to the women's expert division, having been reclassified based on her recent scores. She would be competing directly against the state's top female precision shooters, many of whom she had only read about in shooting publications. "Sarah Martinez," asked a voice behind her as she organized her equipment. "I'm Amanda Foster. I've been hearing about your rapid rise through the divisions. Quite impressive for someone who started shooting less than a year ago." Sarah turned to meet Amanda, a woman in her early 30s with the confident bearing of an accomplished competitor. Sarah recognized her name from shooting magazine articles and competition results. Amanda had represented Texas at multiple national championships and held several state records. "Thank you," Sarah replied, trying to hide her nervousness at meeting such an accomplished shooter. "I'm still learning, but I'm excited about the challenge of competing at this level." Amanda smiled genuinely. "The fact that you've progressed this quickly suggests you have exceptional natural ability. Don't let the reputation of the other competitors intimidate you. We all started somewhere, and talent combined with dedication can overcome years of experience." During the practice session before official competition began, Sarah was surprised by her own composure. The intensive training with Margaret had prepared her well for the pressure and atmosphere of a major competition. Her practice shots were grouping tightly, and she felt confident in her preparation. "Your form looks excellent," observed Barbara Wilson, another competitor who had introduced herself during the practice session. Barbara was in her 50s and had been competing at the state level for over 20 years. "Your stance is remarkably stable for someone with limited competition experience." Sarah appreciated the encouragement from more experienced competitors. The competitive shooting community continued to surprise her with its supportive and welcoming nature, even at the highest levels of state competition. The match format consisted of 3 stages: standing precision at 25 yards, sitting precision at 50 yards, and standing precision at 50 yards. Each stage required 40 shots over 2 strings of 20, with scoring based on accuracy and precision. The aggregate score from all 3 stages would determine the state champion. Margaret had developed a specific strategy for each stage based on Sarah's strengths and areas for improvement. "Your standing position at 25 yards should be your strongest stage," Margaret had explained. "Use that to build confidence and momentum for the more challenging longer-distance shooting." When the first stage began, Sarah found herself in the second relay alongside Amanda Foster and several other highly ranked competitors. The pressure was unlike anything she had experienced in local competitions, with spectators, officials, and media representatives observing every shot. Sarah took her position on the firing line and began her pre-shot routine. Breathing exercises, grip adjustment, stance verification, sight alignment check. The routine had become automatic through months of practice, and it helped calm her nerves as the competition commands began. "Shooters, you have 3 minutes for sighting shots, followed by 12 minutes for the first string of 20 shots for record. Load and make ready." Sarah's first sighting shot struck slightly left of center, and she made a minor windage adjustment before firing her second sighting shot. This one was perfectly centered, and she felt her confidence surge. "Commence fire for record." Sarah settled into her shooting rhythm, taking each shot deliberately and maintaining the mental discipline that had become her trademark. The world around her seemed to disappear as she focused entirely on the fundamentals: sight alignment, breathing, trigger control, follow-through. Her first string of 20 shots produced a tight group clustered around the center of the target. Several spectators commented on the consistency of her shooting, and Margaret nodded approvingly from the coaching area. The second string went even better, with Sarah achieving what felt like perfect rhythm and timing. When the stage concluded and targets were scored, Sarah was amazed to learn that she had posted the highest score of the first stage, outperforming several nationally ranked competitors. "Exceptional shooting," commented the range officer as he verified Sarah's target. "That's one of the highest first stage scores we've seen at this competition in recent years." Between stages, competitors had time to rest, analyze their performance, and prepare mentally for the next challenge. Sarah used this time to review her shooting notes and discuss strategy with Margaret. "Your first stage was outstanding," Margaret said, her excitement evident. "You shot with the composure of someone who's been competing at this level for years. The key now is to maintain that mental state for the remaining 2 stages." The sitting position stage at 50 yards was considered more challenging due to the increased distance and the need for exceptional stability without prone support. Sarah had practiced this position extensively, focusing on finding a comfortable and repeatable position that would minimize movement and allow for precise shot placement. As Sarah took her position for the second stage, she noticed that several competitors from the first relay were watching her preparation with interest. Her first stage performance had clearly attracted attention from the shooting community. "She's remarkably composed for such a new competitor," Sarah overheard one spectator comment to another. "Her technique looks like someone who's been shooting at this level for years." The sitting position stage proved more challenging than the standing stage, with wind conditions affecting the longer distance shots. Sarah had to make several sight adjustments during the competition to compensate for changing conditions, demonstrating the tactical skills she had developed through months of training. Despite the challenging conditions, Sarah's performance remained strong. Her groups were slightly larger than in the first stage due to the increased difficulty, but her score kept her in contention for the overall championship. "You're handling the pressure beautifully," Margaret observed between strings. "Your shot calling has been accurate, and your adjustments for wind conditions show good tactical understanding." The final stage, standing position at 50 yards, was universally recognized as the most difficult challenge in precision shooting. The combination of unsupported standing position and extended distance required exceptional stability, mental control, and technical precision. Sarah had worked extensively on this stage with Margaret, developing specific techniques for managing natural body movement and maintaining consistent sight picture over the extended time period required for 40 shots. As the final stage began, Sarah found herself tied for first place overall with Amanda Foster. The championship would likely be decided by their performance in this most challenging discipline. "This is what you've trained for," Margaret reminded Sarah as she prepared for the final stage. "Trust your technique, maintain your mental discipline, and shoot your own match. Don't worry about anyone else's performance." Sarah's final stage began with exceptional focus and concentration. Her first string of 20 shots was the best standing position shooting she had ever performed under pressure, with shots grouped tightly around the center of the target. "Outstanding shooting," called the range officer as Sarah completed her first string. "That's championship-level precision." During the break between strings, Sarah realized that she was not only competing for the state championship, but potentially setting a new competition record. The thought was both exciting and intimidating, adding another layer of pressure to an already intense situation. For her final string of 20 shots, Sarah drew upon every technique and mental strategy she had developed over the past year. Each shot was deliberate and controlled, with perfect attention to the fundamentals that had brought her to this level. As Sarah fired her final shot of the competition, she felt a sense of completion and satisfaction that exceeded anything she had experienced in her previous competitions. Regardless of the final results, she had performed at the highest level she was capable of achieving. The target scoring process took nearly 30 minutes, with officials carefully measuring and verifying each shot placement. The precision required for official state championship scoring was meticulous, and Sarah waited nervously for the final results. When the scores were announced, Sarah was stunned to learn that she had not only won the state championship, but had also set a new women's record for the competition. Her aggregate score exceeded the previous record by 7 points, a significant margin in precision shooting. "Ladies and gentlemen," announced the competition director over the public address system, "our new Texas State Women's Precision Shooting Champion, with a new competition record, is Sarah Martinez." The applause from competitors and spectators was immediate and enthusiastic. Sarah felt overwhelmed by the significance of what she had accomplished and the support she was receiving from the shooting community. "Incredible performance," said Amanda Foster as she congratulated Sarah during the award ceremony. "Your shooting today was at a level I'd expect from someone with years of national competition experience. You have a very bright future in this sport." Barbara Wilson, the veteran competitor who had encouraged Sarah during practice, was equally impressed. "I've been competing at this level for over 20 years, and I've never seen a first-time state competitor shoot with such composure and precision. Your record-setting performance today was truly exceptional." During the drive home, Sarah struggled to process what had happened. In less than a year, she had progressed from never having held a gun to setting a state record and winning a major championship. The transformation seemed almost impossible to believe. "Your performance today exceeded even my highest expectations," Margaret said during their post-competition discussion. "You shot like a veteran competitor, handled pressure like a champion, and set a record that may stand for years to come." Sarah realized that her success was attracting attention beyond the state level. Several national team coaches had been observing the competition, and she had received invitations to compete in prestigious national tournaments. "I think it's time to consider national-level competition," Margaret suggested. "Your scores today would be competitive at any tournament in the country. You've clearly outgrown state-level competition." The suggestion was both exciting and intimidating. National competition would mean competing against the best female precision shooters in the United States, many of whom were international medalists and world record holders. "Do you really think I'm ready for that level of competition?" Sarah asked, still processing her state championship victory. Margaret smiled. "Your performance today answered that question definitively. You're not just ready for national competition, you're ready to be competitive at that level." Over the following weeks, Sarah found herself dealing with unexpected attention from shooting publications, equipment sponsors, and national team selectors. Her rapid rise and record-setting performance had made her a notable figure in the competitive shooting community. "We'd like to feature your story in our next issue," said the editor of Precision Shooting magazine during a phone interview. "Your progression from complete beginner to state record holder in less than a year is unprecedented in our sport." Sarah was uncomfortable with the attention initially, preferring to focus on training and improvement rather than publicity. However, she began to understand that her success could inspire other women to try competitive shooting and challenge stereotypes about female athletic ability. "Your success is important for women's participation in shooting sports," explained Jennifer Walsh, the national champion, who had become an informal mentor to Sarah. "When women see someone like you succeeding at the highest levels, it encourages them to try the sport themselves." Sarah began accepting selected interview requests and speaking opportunities, sharing her story while continuing to focus primarily on training and competition preparation. She was surprised by the positive response from women who had never considered competitive shooting. "I never knew women could compete at such high levels in shooting sports," one woman told Sarah after a presentation at a local women's sports club. "Your story makes me want to try it myself." The recognition and responsibility that came with her success motivated Sarah to continue improving and setting new goals. She began working with a sports psychologist to develop advanced mental training techniques and started a more intensive physical fitness program to support her shooting performance. Success at the national level requires preparation in every aspect of performance, Margaret explained as they developed Sarah's training plan. Technical skill, mental preparation, physical fitness, and tactical understanding all contribute to championship-level shooting. Sarah embraced the comprehensive approach to competitive preparation, understanding that her rapid early success was just the foundation for potentially greater achievements ahead. Her goal was no longer just to compete nationally, but to represent the United States in international competition. The state championship had proven that she belonged among the elite precision shooters in the country. Now she was eager to test herself against the best competitors in the world and see how far her remarkable journey could take her. As Sarah prepared for her first national competition, she reflected on the incredible year that had transformed her from a fearful beginner to a record-holding champion. The quiet kindergarten teacher had discovered abilities that surprised everyone, including herself. The journey was far from over. If anything, the state championship had shown Sarah that her potential in competitive shooting was greater than anyone had imagined. She was ready to take on whatever challenges lay ahead and continue pushing the boundaries of what was possible in her remarkable shooting career. The National Precision Shooting Championships in Colorado Springs represented the pinnacle of competitive shooting in the United States.